We made it live.
We did.
What's going on, people?
The lights kind of washed me out a little bit.
No, you look perfect. You don't think so? Thank you guys for being with us today. Chris Hill.
We're live on both.
From his page. I'm going live from Hatch's page. I got a viewer before you did.
Yeah, I have too many coming in, so it took a minute to upload. What's going on, guys? Y'all give us a little shout. Got 25 on mine.
We're not going to talk about the differences.
We're not.
Because his is going to be significantly higher.
But we're here. It's Friday afternoon. In my community, probably a lot of people getting ready for the big weekend rush. And
so for a long time, I've wanted to write something like this, but haven't. I know you and I have talked about it over the months, maybe years. But the thing that maybe set you over the top was
an article I wrote.
An article called Dear Chefs.
Dear Chefs. Y'all let me know if anyone's read Dear Chefs before.
If you read it on Medium, or where else could they have caught it?
Yeah, it's been cross-posted into like 3 or 4 different languages. It's been read by, I'd say, probably easily a couple million people by now.
Wow.
Which is pretty awesome.
When does Medium send you a shirt?
I don't know if they do that anymore. I asked for one of the new logo shirts, and they never sent me one. But that was very cool. They sent me a shirt, and I was like, yes, I've won. But yeah, before that, it was like I didn't get any traction really whatsoever. Brian Haynes, hey man, just Google Dear Chefs, Chris Hill, and it's an article about the industry and about the challenges we all face and how nobody really prepares you for it, and how a lot of folks in your life, maybe your relationships aren't necessarily going to understand it, but at the end of the day, it's super rewarding. And I know that's something you can relate to with entrepreneurship and starting a business.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I've wanted to write something called Dear Entrepreneurs, and I'm sharing this now. My D's don't work right here. Look at this. There it is. You know, the hardest word to spell is entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur.
So what's
But you know, it's something that I liked the post that you wrote, even if it wasn't for me. It was still something that I could resonate with.
That's why I got probably 1,000 emails from people the first month of that went viral, and it was people like, "Hey, you wrote this for chefs and for restaurant people, but it applies to fill in the blank. You know, if you're starting a business, if you're an artist, if you're..."
You see what that says? Never quit.
Never quit. Love it. Even though it's backwards.
Well, it is on there. Not in my life. That's actually a sticker by 30 Seconds Out, who is a company founded by Sean Evangelista, former Navy SEAL, who created a digital swag agency with his own kind of custom designs.
Nice.
But I love that. We invested in his company a few years ago. It's cool to see what he's doing. But if you guys have questions for either of us throughout, let us know.
If you're getting started in business, this is a really smart business guy. And also let me know too, because I'm actually working on something that'll be launching pretty soon to help some of you guys in the food world with entrepreneurial ventures. So
sweet. So Dear Chefs is about kind of getting through some of the tough times, and I think Dear Entrepreneurs, my version, which is what we're gonna, I guess, do now, is saying that, you know, this is a blank piece of paper.
what are you gonna do with it?
You know, with entrepreneurship, it's really basically the same thing too. Even if you have a plan, even if you know, have some traction, you know, every day you're waking up and you have to deal with something different. And I think a lot of times the world has just said that entrepreneurship is this really sexy thing. When I don't know that I know a single entrepreneur, a single business owner that has like a run of maybe even 1 week where nothing doesn't come up. And I think it's something that we want people to have, you know, the more realistic side of what it is. Yes, good things can happen. But I think all too often we don't realize that we're going through something to get somewhere at a later time.
Right.
And you know, this is this is it every day, right? This piece of paper, we get to craft every day. And I think that's something that a lot of people wish they could do.
Write your own story.
But the thing is you can. Now, I don't want to sit here and say, oh, this isn't going to be hard. It's going to be really freaking hard, right? People ask me all the time, like, what are some of the hardest things? And it just depends on the day. It depends on the week.
And same thing in the restaurant industry.
Yeah, I mean, figuring out how to get that one meal to taste the way that you want. It might just mean, one little, like, Salt Bay piece that's missing, right?
Or how to deal with an employee the right way, like, or the power goes out in the middle of service. Yeah, I mean, for entrepreneurship, for restaurants, whatever, there's not a handbook. Like, when I interviewed Seth Godin,
business, food, fitness, we all go through it. High highs, low lows. But it's how you get through it and the people that you surround yourself with, and by constantly testing and experimenting and learning from others. So Seth Godin said what?
Oh, he said, the difference between a cook and a chef is a cook, and I would say the same thing for entrepreneurship. A cook is someone that, okay, here's the recipe, here are the ingredients, here's how you plate it, here's how you garnish it, now make it. Make it every single time the same way.
Who says that? A chef?
A cook.
A cook.
A cook.
So they have a playbook.
They have a playbook, or what he calls a map. Versus a chef has a compass. This is where I want to go with the company, with this menu, with this interaction. But nobody tells me how to get there. So it's up to you as somebody that's going to think outside the box to get there, to troubleshoot the menu and figure it out, to work through the ingredients and figure out how they work. And it's not going to work every single time, but as long as you're moving in the right direction. I was in another conversation with a buddy who said, it's important to be going down the highway, but it's much more important to be going down the highway the right way. Because if you're going the wrong way, then you're going to have to turn around, get back on track.
But how do you know if you're going through the right way or not?
Well, I think it's really trying to get to know yourself, being self-aware, and knowing, okay, well, like, what am I good at? What am I not? How can I better?
But you could be going down that path, and it seems like things are going well, and then something automatically just pops up, and you don't know.
Right. Well, and I think, yeah.
And was that a rude customer in your case?
A rude customer, or it's the city saying you have to shut down because it's eminent domain, so that you have to move rain. Right. And
how often were you waking up looking at the weather the couple days before when you were buying supplies, saying, "Oh, typically when it rains, we lose 30% of business," and these are all fake numbers, right? But
not as much for that as, like, say, a snowstorm or a nor'easter or something's coming through. Like, if the restaurant's gonna be closed for 2 or 3 days, first of all, it's like, okay, we're not gonna buy as much stuff for service, but also we're gonna have to cut back on some other costs because payroll's coming up next Friday or whenever it is, and we're gonna have X number of sales less than we usually do.
You said a cook follows a playbook, a chef has a compass, they got to figure out their way. In entrepreneurship,
same thing.
So an entrepreneur has a compass.
Yeah.
Right?
This is where I want to go. I'm not there yet, but I got to figure it out. I'm going to find a way. And you might go off the trail a little bit.
So what's the next step from a cook perspective on an entrepreneur?
What do you mean exactly?
Well, so a chef is someone who takes it. A cook is someone who has a playbook to do it. Is like a staff the cook in that case? Is someone...
Oh, I got you.
Yeah, so a lot of people might not be an entrepreneur yet. They might, or they might be following a specific playbook. What would you call that person? Hey, Randy. Hey, Steven. How's it going? If you guys have questions, feel free to ask us. I think we're going to be open book today, so ask us anything. Man.
Yeah, we got
almost anything.
We got a bunch of comments so far. Yeah, I mean, I think it really comes down to, okay, so yeah, if you're in the entrepreneurial world, if you're trying to start a business, whether it's a small, something on the side, or it's something bigger scale, I think it helps to have a playbook to kind of start out with. That way you can kind of model other people, what they've done and how they've been successful, marketing plans and things like that. But then...
But just because you follow one of those things doesn't mean that it's going to work.
It does not.
Right.
But at a certain point, you have to step out on your own and say, you know what? I believe in this. I'm going to go for it. And you have to figure out what's important to you. What's important for you starting this company, the culture of the company, what you want to do with it. And then that's when you have the compass. You say, okay, like, this is how I think I want things to work. I'm not sure if it's going to work or not. And you try it and it doesn't work. So then okay, let's get back on the trail.
Brian says, how do you start building a restaurant? Also, do you really have to have a theme? So you can answer the theme part. I think when starting a restaurant is very similar to starting any kind of business. What I would do is so I believe that in my business Hatch and with any business that we work with, it is our responsibility to try and save people money, time, and resources, right? So Brian, what I would do is I would invite over some friends or some friends' friends, or post something on Facebook to invite people to a location of yours, likely your home or someone else's home, and tell them that you are going to provide a meal to them and have them test out that meal. I then, and maybe even before that, I would see if they would pay for that meal. What you're doing is basically testing out the waters, and if you cannot get someone to purchase your food at your home,
who's probably a friend or somebody.
Right. Who's to say that they're going to, once you get a brick and mortar. So once you get a brick and mortar, once you get an actual, or a food truck or anything like that, like it's a lot more difficult for you to test things out because you're just bringing people in to try and make money. And so what I would do first is try and sell it. If you don't love selling it and all you love doing is cooking, and I told you this before, maybe
you're a cook.
Maybe you're a cook, or you could be the chef in this case too, but you don't want to be the restaurant owner, right? And I think those are very different things, and I think a lot of people go down the wrong route. They're amazing chefs, but they're not good at business,
right?
And that could be even from the front of the house, back of the house, ordering all those things. They can prepare a delicious meal,
and dealing with people, managing. I mean,
but there's so many other things, and the same can be with business. You could be great. You could have an amazing app. You could have an amazing tool, a widget.
But if you can't get it in the right people's hands, it doesn't matter.
Right. And so, Brian, I think the key is if you don't like that piece, really understand what you're going into. You may want to go find a more entrepreneurial restaurant that allows you to test things out more. Because are you trying to make your food and provide it to people? Are you trying to make money? Like, I think there's a lot of people in restaurants are going towards the masses. Some are going to the specific niches.
We're just kind of get to the whole like theme. There's this tension that I think all chefs have of like, okay, this is what the customers want or think they want. This is the food that I want to do. I have to meet somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, I'm not going to have enough customers buying the food that I want to make, and we close the doors.
And I think a lot of people struggle with that in business too, where you really want your idea to get out there and people to consume it, but it might not be getting towards the people that you want because you're not fulfilling what they need, right? And so I think that we go through this a lot, constantly trying to figure out what people need and want, and making sure that on our menu that we're saying this is how we can help you. Because then they buy the dish. And if they don't buy the dish, then we're basically just marketing to market, and sell to sell, but we're not actually making that sale. And so I think business owners lose when they don't realize that they are in business for others. And I think a lot of people say, oh, I can work for myself now. You can. And there are a lot of things that you get to now do that you might not have been able to before. You do get to pick your schedule. Right? You do get to pick when you have vacations. You do get to pick all those things. You are the person, you're the, what is it, HBIC? Head bitch in charge, something like that? I'm not a bitch though. But when you are that, you get to dictate what happens. And I think often.
But with that comes with responsibility.
Absolutely. What are you willing to give up in return to maybe please more people? And when people, so like when someone comes in, or so we do surveys after some of the stuff that we do, and we say, hey, how was this? And people say, oh, it was wonderful, I loved this, this, and this, I hated that, that, and that. If you're not willing to take feedback, you shouldn't ask for the survey, right? And so...
And not take it personally.
Right, not take it personally. And so we did an event this year, we've done it 3 times. Last year, people said, can you please provide wine at this event? And so we can sit there and go, no, all we want to do is have beer and water, and you're just going to have to deal with it, or we take responsibility for the survey that we asked, get an answer, and then say, we're going to do that. And so this year we had wine at this event, not a really big and difficult move. And people said, thank you so much for having wine. So guess what? That question never came up this year, or that response didn't come up this year. And so I think you're not always going to, you're never going to please everyone, right? And that's okay.
But the customer felt heard.
Right? And if you can talk to them, like afterwards, all the phone numbers of people that I had for this event, I called them and said, thank you for coming. I basically spent that entire Friday calling them. Those who answered gave me feedback, told me what they loved, what they hated. It's kind of like the manager going around, right? To the tables. But I think it's even deeper because you get that next day feel of it. We're like, wow, this was really good. Now I felt bad because I didn't have everyone's numbers. So then people that got the survey, we could get stuff from there. But it makes me say, could we start getting numbers from these people so that we can call them and follow up with them and see what they want. If this information is valuable for you guys, we'd love for you guys to like it, share it, comment on it. But I think the key, and we got a lot of questions, the key is really you're asking that question for a reason. Don't just ask it to ask it.
Because you feel like you have to, yeah.
Right. If you're not going to do anything with it, then don't waste your time. I tell people this all the time. If you're going to go market or go networking, and you're never going to follow up with those people, don't go network. Mm-hmm. You're just going to card collect. You're going to waste people's time. You're going to waste your time. You're not going to give the results that you wanted. So just stop wasting your time doing it and just say, let's find something else.
Yeah.
And it's perfectly fine if you don't want to go networking, if you don't want to make those calls, if you don't want to email people, right?
Then you're also maybe more of the cook. You need to figure out.
Right, but someone's got to figure out what that
means to them
yeah.
too. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, there's a lot of things associated with being the guy in charge.
Andrew, I think food trucks are the same as any other business. You have to bring people to you. There's a food truck in town here, Carnage Asada, that says if we're not moving, we're losing. So she realized that if they were
3 or 4 trucks?
Yeah, at least 2. And she realized that if she was in the same location here in the Norfolk, Virginia Beach area, if she was in the same location every day, she would lose money, right? So I think taking pictures of your food is a good idea. Talking to influencers and seeing if you maybe could provide them a meal to then have them share it out. You lose, I don't know, $3 or $4 to try and potentially make $300 or $400, $3,000 or $4,000, depending how big your shop is. There could be big wins on that. Also, one thing I've never seen at a food truck is the food court effect, where
the samples.
You give the sample, right? Have you ever seen that?
No, I don't think so.
Or maybe that food truck could give a sample out to businesses that morning and go to that place. I just saw Jimmy John's do it this morning, where they were going to an office filled with buildings to give them all a really small sample, hoping that someone in the next coming day,
we should get some Jimmy John's
would get some Jimmy John's, right? So how can you entice someone, provide them a little bit of that? I think oftentimes people know exactly what they need to do, they just don't do it for whatever reason.
And I think along the same lines is, once you get the customer, how can you keep them really happy? So for me, I had this great Valentine's Day dinner. The chef, he knew I was a chef. He knew I had a decent sized following, but he pulled out all the stops. I mean, it was a beautiful night, beautiful. We had 15 courses. I mean,
wow,
right there at the sushi bar, and it was one of the best nights I've ever had. And he was so.
Had you ever been there before?
I'd never been there before, and he was so thoughtful. And afterwards, I told him I was heading to New York in a couple of weeks. He's like, yeah, he used to work for a really high-end restaurant there. He's like, let me link you up with them. He kept the conversation going. So I was still paying, but okay, well, this customer it's already a customer. How can I take it to the next level and give them a little bit more so they want to come back, sooner next time?
Yeah, I mean, that personal touch, right? All too often, people are trying to make things easier instead of trying to make people super happy. And so people, I get this message a lot, and I think it's really interesting when people are like, we see you everywhere. How do you have enough time to say hello to me? And I think it comes back to caring. Yes, at some point you want some action to happen. Absolutely. But if you suck and your product sucks and people don't like you and they don't like your product and they don't feel that you're
Care about it.
what do you think's going to happen? Nothing. You might
business.
get them that one time, and then you lose them forever. And so I found that by using specific mediums at specific times, we can talk to a lot of people that could be prospective customers.
Yeah.
And I think they care. I think they like that I am talking to them maybe at a time when other people wouldn't. And I think that puts us a step ahead. Hey, Nick, what's going on? Hey, Becky.
Yeah, it's like, why should anyone
Pam
go to
Allison's
your restaurant
on
or
it.
your dinner?
You're not
versus somebody else?
delivering free food, though, right? You are delivering free food, but you're giving someone a small piece to then get them to buy the whole pie,
Right.
right?
Like you and I have talked about too, like
it's marketing.
like you and I have talked about too, where like say we take our like you take your fiance out for dinner one night, and you're a semi-regular, you're there once a month, let's say, and they recognize your face. Maybe the chef's in the back working on a new dish for the next menu that's coming out next week. They bring you out, you're already paying, but they bring you out a little sample of, oh, hey, the chef's working on this new dish for next week. Let us know what you think. Then you feel special.
I remember a few years ago, actually at the same event that we were talking about, Becky, we'll talk a little louder. If you guys are also having some issues with sound, let us know. A few years ago, we did that same event, and a restaurant that I would frequent a lot would. So afterwards, they did a story. The newspaper did a story on us, and this restaurant took that article and put it on their wall, and just put it there. And for the first few times, I didn't see it. But then when I saw it, I was like, wow, like that's really, really cool that they would do that. I mean, there's tons of articles in newspapers. There's tons of articles that they could have done. There's tons of things that they couldn't have done, right? So every time, this is Famous Uncle Al's on Granby Street. Every time I would go in there, the owner would say, hey, thank you, and kind of give you he couldn't give me a handshake because he was cooking. But he would say something along the lines of, thank you for being a customer. And then I probably used to be one of his best customers. Then I stopped going there all the time, and I've lost a little bit of weight. I'm a guy who loves hot dogs and hamburgers. But, by going that extra mile, it shows people that you care. And I think at the end of the day, people do not retain clients, and they don't get clients because they seem to only push the same thing over and over and over and over again. And I completely understand when people go, well, I'm a business, I need to make sales. You're absolutely right. But there is something about the world of sharing and people who don't feel like they are pushed to share. Even though I just asked you guys to share this, right? You won't share it if you don't like it.
Nice little subliminal,
right?
Share it again.
Right, share it again, right? But you get my point, is no one's going to share a piece of content. Like, you've had something that's been pushed, 100,000 times, more than that?
Yeah, I have a piece on Facebook that's almost at 300,000.
Right, 300,000. If that piece of content was terrible, it never would have gotten shared.
Right.
But if that was funny, helped someone, was
look
meaningful,
delicious,
caring,
or if it's a dish and tastes delicious, you share it.
But so the key is, care, produce good content
Or products.
And people will
We'll
potentially share it
and talk about it. Here's one. Now I can answer this, but I want you to answer it first because we both had employees before, me in restaurants and you here. How do I tell my boss that my ideas are good, even though they don't think they are? He says he knows his recipes are good, and so does his crew, but he can't get his boss to trust him.
Chris Banks?
Yep, Chris Banks.
So I think depending on who you are in the restaurant, try and test it to your customers.
Or yeah, what I say, kind of along the same lines.
Just like take a sample out and say, hey, this is what we're thinking about.
I wouldn't
doing.
do that behind the chef.
Oh, it's the chef or the boss?
The chef is his boss, so it's maybe like a sous chef or a line cook.
Yeah.
He has some good ideas. Well, I'm not sure actually. Somewhere, either one. But yeah,
I think there are bosses out there that are not willing to look at different. So the manager is not willing to.
Or the owner, yeah.
He just said the manager.
Oh, gotcha.
So there are some bosses out there who are not willing to empower their teams to.
Which sucks.
To see that they could maybe make something better. So first things first, I would say you might find a different place. If that place is, if there are other things that are going on there, right? Actually, not even first. I would say that's probably something just to be thinking about. I would have a conversation with the owner and say, I've been really, you are the manager.
I'm confused. Look,
yeah, I'm very
while,
confused.
While you're figuring that out,
yeah.
Here's what I would say to tell them to do. So if you have all these recipes, and first of all, has the boss tried it before? And if not, don't buy a bunch of products through the restaurant, but go to the local supermarket or the farmer's market, whatever, get some good products for these recipes, make them at home, and then bring them in, finish them off there at the restaurant, plate them how you would for a customer, and say, here you go, boss, try it, let me know what you think.
But for whatever reason, I think Chris is the boss, so I think I'm confused. I think you're confused, but so I think that if you don't have a conversation with people, most things go sour because you don't have conversations with people, right? So I think that if you go and you talk to your boss and say, hey, I'd really like to spend 5 minutes with you, 10 minutes with you, and tell you about what I'm working on and what I want to do in life. I know as a small employer, I want my team to do whatever they want to do in life. Right? It doesn't mean that
be
I
successful.
want to, whatever that is.
Yeah.
Right? I may not always be the person that can help them do that, but I hope that for however long they're with me, that they can get closer to that step.
And that should be the goal for any boss. Really.
I would hope, but for some reason, not everyone wants the best things for others. I look at this world and I say, you only live once, right? And if you're not trying to live every day to its fullest, like, what else is there?
Right.
And so...
well, yeah, and I think, so like I told you before, there's this guy, Mike Robbins, said, every relationship isn't where it wants to be because of you're avoiding one 10-minute sweaty palm conversation. So I think having that 10-minute sweaty palm conversation where it's it's not going to be fun.
But that's what people are afraid of.
Oh, exactly. I'm afraid of those conversations too, and that's why we don't want to have. That's why our palms get sweaty. That's why we don't want to have them. But if we do have them, if we have the courage to say, you know what, can we talk for just a few minutes after work today? I have some things I want to talk about, and you break down the walls. You have a really human connection.
Probably end up having a better relationship with that
better
person
relationship. Then there on out, you can probably talk about more things. I mean, it opens up so many pathways, and then they're able to also connect with the other people around you so much better. I mean, it's this huge cycle, like this domino effect that allows for people to open up and be more comfortable around each other.
And I think right there are people who. So I was just listening to one of your podcasts. Chris just started a podcast.
Yeah, Making the Cut. Y'all, go subscribe if you don't mind. I think you'll like it. Some cool stuff on there.
I have listened to
a couple episodes.
Listened to one, and then I watched the other video before it went on. But you had interviewed Simon Sinek, the guy who talks about your why, and you can have conversations with people, and say that you did something. But did you or didn't you? And so I know that that I was listening to you because there are certain things in the podcast that you said, and I was like, I really like how you said you brought things out that likely people don't bring out. And I think one of the questions, so we just started this thing, a video/audio podcast called The 1004 Show, which we're trying to help empower entrepreneurs to get more awareness about themselves. So some early stage companies have hard times getting some awareness out. So we wanted to help them out, but also to tell more of a deeper story to these people. And so my favorite question on that right now is, do you still talk to your high school best friend? And I've asked that, I think we've done about 16 episodes. I've probably asked that question 4 or 5 times, and all of them say yes. And I'm amazed by that, because I think it's interesting. I don't, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think that makes me a lesser person.
This is different.
But all these other people, and they all say for the same reason too. Facebook, right?
Okay.
Which is interesting. But I want to learn, and I think other people want to learn, like, why people think the way that they do.
Right.
And so what got me on this tangent was, we don't know where other people are that day, or what the series of their life got them to the point that they are.
Right.
Right. So
we only see things from the way we understand the world.
And so we could think that those people are complete dicks, and they may be, but there's a reason why they are that way. There's a reason why that person might put up that. There's a reason why that person might not want to be confronted, because a situation when they were in 3rd grade, or when they were 23 years old, made them feel a different way, and they've taken that scenario and continued on life
subconsciously
that way.
too. I mean, it's not like an active decision. I just did this podcast episode right before we filmed this with Steve Sisler, who's a behavior analyst. And a couple things he says. One is that you see other people through your lens, not theirs. So, like, we all have our own biases and perspectives, and it's really easy to say, oh, like, Sue was late again today. What the hell's wrong with Sue? Well, okay, maybe she was late. Maybe there is something wrong, but she needs to be handled in a different way than the other person does, and maybe Sue has something going on in her life. So instead of firing her or just writing her up, say, hey, Sue, like, you're a great employee. You've been here for three years now.
This is
what is there something going on?
Mm-hmm. But even deeper, right, to that is there could be some psychological thing, but maybe the scenario that you as a boss put together is actually hurting your business. And what I mean by that is,
a lot of restaurants, a lot. I mean,
right. So maybe you have 9 to 5 hours, and I don't have this, but I've told people this story because when I worked in TV, a lot of people had a hard time traveling.
Never would have guessed, but yeah.
I know, it's terrible. Had a hard time traveling from one side of the tunnel to another. So here in southeastern Virginia, we have a bunch of tunnels, and sometimes there's
traffic
tunnel
is insane,
right? And so they were forced to be at work by 9 o'clock. Yet they were always late, and then they would always be looked at as, you're always that late person. But instead, if the boss would come in and say, hey, I'm not going to negatively affect you if you find a way to get here a little bit earlier and leave a little bit earlier, or leave a little bit later so that you don't hit that traffic, and then maybe leave a little bit later too. And so that person who every day has to go in there going, oh my God, I hate being here because I'm about to be picked on, it may be because they just for the last 45 minutes to an hour and a half were stuck in like,
good luck.
So they cannot emotionally get out of that, and then they take that scenario into the workplace, get picked on, don't produce well, not liked, and all these things come together, and you're like, and all you had to do was let them come in 15 minutes late.
Right. But a lot of times we're so tunnel visioned to where we don't understand the things we put in place. I mean, you can tie that into a restaurant in any number of capacities.
Look, you want those people to be there on time, but is everyone there at 11 o'clock when it opens up, or could you stagger it a little bit to make sure that things are there, right? So by thinking a little, by being a little innovative in the piece and going, instead of everyone coming at 7 o'clock and be pissed off for 5 hours while cutting fruit, you can have them come in a staggered way. I worked in restaurants too.
Yeah.
Right? Everyone came at the same time. Right? Someone did way more work than anyone else. You always were pissed off. Like what? Like when you look at a restaurant, when you look at a business, when you look at life, why do you like? I like to always dig deep into figuring out why something is really the way that it is. Because I think all too often people just say, "Oh, it's like this because of this."
Right.
Right. So it floods here because it floods, because it rains. No, it floods because somewhere else over here it does this, and the trickle effect has this end result. Right? So how can you try and get to that end result, go backwards and say, we need to fix kind of this scenario, and it's at point A, and if we could fix this, everything changes.
Yeah.
Or maybe you have better results. Maybe not everything changes. But
it reminds me of a different podcast episode we had with David Burkus, where he said, a true leader innovates the factory, not the product. So it's like, if you're the leader, if you're the chef, and I think a chef or kitchen leader still has to be part of the innovation of the product, but a true leader has to put in place the parameters and the environment and the culture that's going to allow for people to best do their work that is going to help them and you to be successful and effective and make the customers happy. Another quote he says is I just blanked on it.
you want to
A leader has two jobs. One is to figure out what's getting in the way of their employees doing their best work, and two, to figure out a way to get rid of that.
And by the way, we're not saying these things saying that we're perfect. We're going through all of these challenges, and these are the ways that we've gone through them themselves. I want to do some rapid fire with your questions. If you guys have questions for me, feel free to ask them through. Jance, how does one become, Brian Haynes says, how does one become a good businessman while being a chef? Surround yourself by really, really good business people.
And want to learn. Like, if you want to learn that stuff, you'll learn.
On your way to work, listen to podcasts, communicate with people, surround yourself by other people that you want to become.
And if you are, like, say, a sous chef, like, follow the executive chef around.
Be the apprentice,
if he or
even
she
if
does
you
a
are
good
the
job,
business
yeah.
owner with other people. Jan, constantly change things up. I mean, I think it's important. Congrats on 8 months. Andrew says, is 12 grand too cheap to start a food truck? I wouldn't start a food truck for 12 grand. I'd go find another food truck that you can borrow for a day and see if you can bring anyone. Find a food truck that's not open every day and see if you can even bring business to you. If you can't, you probably will waste your money and never be able to figure that out.
I told you about a guy up in New York who started a pop-up for barbecue. He'd pop up all over New York City with his rendezvous spot where he'd sell 50 pounds of barbecue a week. He'd have people that were there to get it. He, over the course of a couple of years, earned a ton of money, had enough to open up his own restaurant, and took care of itself.
Chris, just keep pushing. Chris Banks, just keep pushing, and you don't win day one.
No, and that's, like you and I talked about, like, there's so many highs, there's so many lows.
Chris Hill quotes go on my communication board.
That's what's up. Thank you, Tina.
Oh man, Matt Donovan, roll tide, just not this year. We might lose you on Chris, so if you guys are looking and wanting to talk, you can go to this page.
Why are we losing on me?
Because
my battery dying?
Yeah.
How much is left? 15?
I don't know. But if you do, just go see the rest of the live
Dave
page.
Bridges left a comment on yours. How much is that?
I can't write that. Yeah. As a culinary student, any advice you would give me?
Let me grab my charger.
I think the same as
Okay.
everyone. Always push yourself. A lot of comments. Thank you guys for these. Yeah, Chris, anything you're doing for the people every time. All right, questions on my end. Thank you guys for the questions as well. Chris is getting his charger so that we don't lose it. If for some reason we do lose him, we're also live on my company's at Start With Hatch, and I link that in here as well. Let's go through ours. Lavina, good to hear from you. Yeah, I think, like you said, people, you can tell if someone's being fake or not. I'm playing a long-term game. I want to invest in people, and I think you should try. Your goal shouldn't be to have, like, let's say you go to a networking event. The idea shouldn't be go talk with as many people as possible. The idea should be that you should have try and have at least one really good conversation. Because if you can do that once, then maybe you can do it twice. I wish we had a behind the scenes look at Chris trying to put his charger into a phone. Very Funny. Look at that. It worked. Chris, good job.
It was in my pocket the whole time.
When you put that in, it goes boom.
It was in my pocket the whole time.
Always in your pocket, Chris.
Brandy from Tennessee.
All right. So, yeah, care, Lavina, or don't ask questions. Dave says, what is your best tip for inter-team communication?
I got one for you. From the Simon Sinek interview, he said, there's a difference between listening and waiting for your turn to speak. Like, I think all of us are bad at that. Like, you get in an argument with somebody.
Especially if we're an extrovert.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you.
I know I'm terrible at that.
I get in an argument with anyone. Like, girlfriend, friend. It's like, you're saying something.
You get passionate.
I do. It's like, what's my next statement while you're still talking? Versus, back up a second. What are you actually saying? Maybe I can understand it from your point of view.
So, Dave is on my team, so hopefully he's not doing this as a mean thing. I think that inter-team communication is important. Obviously, you have to figure out why people communicate the way that they do. I think that the tool that you use isn't as important as making sure that you get as deep as you can on something. So I've been working with Dave for probably almost 3 years now, and I think Dave has started to learn how I communicate. And I think I can communicate good like this, but when I have something in my mind and trying to get that out, I have a really hard time explaining that to them, my team, because I'm like, oh, I think it should be like this. Not like in a dick kind of way, just like, oh, I kind of want to see it like this. And then I have this thing in my mind, but then what I don't want is them to just do it. I want them to have kind of creative control to then develop it in what they are good at, but just be thinking about how that can get out. So from an inter-team communication, I think it's making sure that people understand
Expectations.
what you want, right? So over the last, 6 months or so, I've really tried on things that needed to be more detailed, have a more detailed approach. We worked on a proposal the last few days for one of our platforms. And I think that had I tried getting that done a year ago, it would not have been sent off several times already, right? So we built this proposal, which basically collected a bunch of information that we were using anyway and put it into one proposal. But I could be wrong, Dave. I mean,
So that's also, that sounds like a year ago.
But when we're done with this, I'm going to go talk to you and say, and I think, hold on. So I do have these conversations where I'm like, am I getting better at this, right? Because the same way where you want to find new people and care about them, communicate with them, like if we're not getting better at that communication piece, then you don't know if you don't ask, right? I'm not saying ask every day. I'm not saying ask every week, maybe not even every month, but give yourself some sort of like consistent ways to be like, all right, I think I'm doing this better. Right? It seems like we're fulfilling this task quicker. Are we really making headway on this? Mm-hmm. And then so, having these meetings, I'd say I probably have a few times a year, like one-on-ones, and saying, like, how are you? Where do you think we are? This is a business, so we still have to, be working throughout. But you don't want to get through. Good example. I was a swimmer for a long time, and about 6 years into it, I found out that I was over-rotating by that much. I swam with the Canadian Olympic swim coach or something like that. His name was Mike Pliskaitis or something.
You stopped that, and then you started swimming much faster.
Well, no, he told me that I was over-rotating by a little bit, and if I don't move it back this way, I'm going to start having shoulder problems at some point. Now, I haven't had that issue, but sometimes you do something for so long, you don't know when you need to switch. Right. And so it can be hard to hear someone say, oh no, you're actually getting worse at this, right? I hope that's not the case. But
even if it seems natural what you're doing too.
Yeah, I mean, but we all go through these issues too as to why are we having the thoughts that we do. Becky says, so Dave, we'll have a conversation after this as well. So Becky says that treated people have histories that still influence their attitudes. Ideally, we would want to spend time figuring out why and where. But if those attitudes are currently at odds with your goals and the progress of your team, then I'd want to address it, of course. let the person go, let them know the real reason behind your decision so they'll understand, hopefully grow from it. 100% agree. Not everything is a good fit. I think that's why you should work with people longer before you actually bring them on in a full-time capacity.
And the more clear you are up front about what your company represents, whether you're a restaurant or some sort of entrepreneurial venture, the more clear you are on like the culture for what you stand for, maybe it's your menu, like what your employees wear, like the core values of the company, the more clear you are on all that stuff, the better that's going to serve as a gatekeeper for the people that you want coming in, is to keep the ones you don't want from staying out on the outside. And
I think it's kind of like qualifying your leads for sales too.
Yeah.
Is trying to figure out who is in there, and who really wants to be where you're trying to be. So
sure.
Spend money to make money, but not if you don't have to. Hold on, what was his name? Andrew, about food trucks. I get it. You do have to spend some money to buy the food and things like that, but if you could take someone's already existing food truck that is not open on one day and call them and say, hey, maybe even give them all the money for using the food truck. You're just trying to make sure that you are not going to go into an extreme problem because you wanted to buy a food truck or a brick and mortar or start a business when you actually don't even like doing any of those things. You want to be more of a chef. And I'm not saying that's you, but I think a lot of people love food trucks and they want to, start a food truck to start a food truck when who knows what's going to happen with it.
Pam has a good question. We kind of just touched on this a little bit, I think. But how, Pamela Allison, how available should I be to my managers as owner when I'm home? My husband thinks I'm too available.
That's expectations from the beginning.
Yeah, it's expectations, and also I think you have to have clear boundaries. So like, you should be able to, as the owner, to be able to step out for a shift or for a day or two or for a vacation, hopefully, where you can enjoy time with your husband and your family, whatever that might be, where you can trust the people there to get the job done. At the same time, obviously there's going to be challenges. Things are going to happen where they need you to make an executive decision.
Yes, but they
need to feel empowered to make the decisions themselves.
If you tell people, so there are times at night, and sometimes I do this and I don't, right? Dave's still watching, he'll disagree with me. But I try. And I used to do this all the time. I used to email them 24/7, text them 24/7, say, we need to do this. And it wasn't an immediate thing, right?
Thanks, Andrew.
But now I sit there and I go, okay, how do I have this message, but it doesn't have to go directly to them right now, right? Could I send it via an email instead of text, right? So I don't think, and I don't have my phone on me so I can't look, but I don't know that we've actually said anything from a work perspective after your traditional 9 to 5 hours in weeks. I know a few weeks ago I almost did. I had it written down, and then I stopped myself and I emailed them instead.
It might be a little bit different in this circumstance, only because, like if it's 10 o'clock at night and the power goes out, that's a phone call that you probably have to make.
But those are outliers. Those are extremes.
Sure.
Right. If you get robbed, you're going to call the manager or you're going to call the boss. You don't need to call the person and say, "What do I do? I need 86 avocados."
Yeah, but you as the owner need to empower them to make that decision so they feel like they can.
Absolutely. Right.
Yeah.
When someone emails us and we're using like our mass email blast type of stuff, and someone emails me back like, hey, this was great, I make sure that the person who wrote that got that email, right? So we post, we have a weekly newsletter called The Scoop, and yesterday we wrote about what is a vector file, and I think we got a couple of emails, and the person who wrote that article, Dave, I forwarded him the messages, right?
Right.
No, just look, people are talking.
I thought they were replying to you, gotcha.
But in that same case, if something happens with someone who produced something and there is a question towards it, I usually just forward it to that person and let them handle it.
Yeah.
Because they were the one who did that task, so they could figure out, why was the line not cut the way that it needed to be done.
Right.
right?
Right.
And so
then they, over time, also create some ownership for themselves.
well, and hopefully it allows them to say, okay, I wonder why this person thought this way.
Yeah.
Maybe I can think like them too.
Yeah, absolutely. Jim Manchinsky, I don't know if I'm saying that right. So Jim, this is Chris here. Yeah, I'm former restaurant owner, chef, writer, speaker now. Connected with all you guys. Zach here is an entrepreneur, runs essentially like a gym for entrepreneurs.
Former Olive Garden eater, Jim. He used to be at Olive Garden, it said.
I didn't catch that part.
No, just click over his name.
Oh, gotcha. Former retired.
Retired. I know,
Oh,
and
gotcha.
I said I'm retired. Olive Garden.
Gotcha.
No, I would still go to Olive Garden.
Nicholas Keating asks if there's any opinions for doing culinary work for people who are just starting out. Should I make a contract for them to sign to guarantee I'll get paid? Nicholas, I assume you're talking about like if you're working for somebody, but you should have some sort of employment application where that's contractual if you sign it and
But
they
I mean,
hire you.
I guess if he was thinking about the kind of apprentice style.
Sure, but yeah, I mean, if you're an apprentice or if you're staging, that's really you putting in your dues to get results down the road.
Eat food or die.
Let's see here.
We answered that.
That's
Give Dave a shout out.
Dave Ritt. What's up, buddy? Thanks for your interaction, man.
Paul just got on. Hello, Paul.
Let's see here.
I stagger. I want to say I stagger. Pam. I stagger.
Yeah, Pamela, I think it's just all about understanding everyone. It's definitely harder now because, like you said, you can text somebody or email somebody from your phone, or you can have the security cameras.
The first
on
time
your
ever,
phone.
there's 5 generations in the workforce.
Really, that's incredible.
Right? People want communication different ways. That doesn't mean they want to communicate 24/7. It may mean that you have to pick up the phone for one generation and text on another generation. I think that it's just you, Pam, in this case, understanding that that younger person might want might want that delivery via text, when someone else might want it via a phone call or in person.
Eat food or die, says Eric. Rock on, man.
Hook 'em horns.
So yeah.
Hook 'em horns? Is that like Roll Tide? What's Roll Tide's thing? Is there like a...
We just go like this. So Nicholas, yeah, you should sign some sort of agreement, which should be like an application. When you sign your tax forms and everything else, that should cover all that. And if it doesn't, then I would seriously reconsider who you're working for. What's the best way to deal with people that do it for a job, not as a career? Well, Eric, I think that's part of managing expectations for your company. So when you hire, if you know it's somebody's coming in for the season, hopefully you know that they're not going to be like, hopefully you know that what to expect from them in terms of, okay, yeah, they'll be gone at the end of the summer here in Hawaii if it's because it's resort time. But I think it's important to also let them know, hey guys, like, you're here to do a job. You're here to hopefully grow and learn some things. And if you are open to that, that's what will happen. But it's definitely challenging.
As we said 20 minutes ago, if you don't communicate, worse things will happen.
Yeah.
Why do you and your significant other get into fights or not get over situations? The more you communicate, the more likely you are to resolve a situation.
And the longer you postpone that communication, the worse it gets. Brenton, love the podcast. Thanks, man. Making the Cut podcast, 1004 show podcast. Let's wrap it up. What do you say?
What has been some? Well, let's get back to kind of some of the biggest challenges. You want to ask me anything? You want me to ask you anything?
Well, we kind of started talking about like how starting a business can maybe be like the Dear Chefs article that I wrote, how it's challenging and how people a lot of times don't know what they're getting into. If there's one piece of advice,
Okay.
I would give people.
See, this is me jumping into a conversation like you were saying don't do. So.
Yeah, I was laying in bed last night. Yeah, exactly. I was laying in bed last night thinking. I fell asleep like 2 a.m. last night, and I'm thinking, my mind is racing like crazy, like it always is, it seems. And I'm like, if there's one thing I know to be true about the world, about the way we all interact, it's that if you care about something, the more you struggle and fight through to get to the end result for what you want for that, the more meaningful and gratifying it's going to be. Whether it's starting a business, whether it's becoming a chef, whether it's a relationship with a loved one, the more you invest in something, even if it's hard up front, even if it's challenging, even if it's stressful, the more gratification you get out of it in the long run.
But you have to make sure that you can live.
Sure.
So let me get to this. You may have to, while you're trying to get something else to work, right? And
Side hustle, yeah.
And Josh just came here, so he's heard me say this before. You may have to, if you truly know that something is validated, and you truly know that people want your thing, it just isn't where it wants to be yet, which I think is almost everyone, right? You may have to do things that are extremely uncomfortable for you.
Yeah.
I remember one of our first year in business, we made very little money. And the majority of that money came from me doing some side hustle piece where I would go on a little website called Fiverr.com and I would sell my services because I needed to make sure that I could stay afloat, or I needed to put money or grab money off of a credit card, even though it's not necessarily the smartest thing.
Right.
But you have to make sure that just because you're doing something that you love, that you can still live too. Because you don't want to put yourself in a situation where you just do something that you love and then you end up being $500,000 in debt.
Sure.
Because you're doing something for that reason. Maybe there's a different way that you can live that life to get something. A lot of people that are members of 1004, I constantly say, review your numbers. And I don't mean how much money you're bringing in, how much money you're spending. What I mean is go download your bank statement and see, where you are spending specific money on specific things. And are you actually using that thing over and over and over again? Because the reason why recurring type of companies are popular, because a lot of people just say, F it. I'm just gonna keep doing it, right?
Yeah.
So imagine if you had a Dollar Shave Club, as I have this beard, a Dollar Shave Club, $6 a month membership, a Cox Cable Bill membership, and that's a Cox Cable, for those of you who don't know, is like a
Comcast or Charter,
cable, internet,
watch TV.
whatever. What if you never watch TV, yet you have $100, $200, $300 a month, I don't know how much cable is these days, bill? Mm-hmm. What is 300 times 12?
$3,600.
$3,600. So imagine you're a restaurant or business and you have a TV bill that's $300 a month, yet you guys never use it. That's $4,000 freaking dollars a year that you could be saving, and maybe that's the difference between you making money and you not making money.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so we're constantly I am anal as crap about this, where I'm like, am I really using that thing? Are we really, is this tool that's $50 a month, which is $600, is that really getting us?
And if you're questioning it, try it out. Try out.
Yeah, get rid of it. What are you going to lose if you don't? But then you say, okay, that's $600 or that $3,600. What can I do with that in exchange? And I think all these people, I get messages all the time. I want to raise money, and I go, why? They go, well, things are a little tough right now. And I go, as someone who's gone through that experience, I go, well, have you exhausted every freaking avenue to try and make that better? Because if you raise money and then you receive it because you convinced someone to get it, but you are putting yourself in a bad hardship, the business was going in a bad situation, and then you raise some money, and you still run the business the way you were, you're still going to go through the same scenario once you run through all that money.
And then you're going to owe that.
Then you're going to owe that money. Someone else is going to, you're going to lose that money for someone else, right? So at the end of the day, it's not that you need to raise money. It's that you need to get out there and find people that want what you can deliver, or go be a driver for some ride sharing,
Uber.
right? Go God, I mean, Dave has told me before that like people who valet cars get like $300 a night.
Yeah, crazy.
I mean,
yeah,
that's good money, right? Go be a bartender somewhere, right? Go do something. Like, if money is an issue for you, really figure out why money is an issue for you. Mm-hmm. Is it because you're not selling enough? Is it because you clearly are just paying for things that you shouldn't be paying for? Right? My buddy, Mike Fleck, one of my favorite things that he ever said was, I don't like to spend more than $100 for anything, like business services, whatever. And that was his, when he was early on in the business, he was like, if I spend more than $100 on, or I won't spend more than $100 on this. And so that was the determining factor. If it's $100 or more, nope. If it's $100 or less, he was more likely to say yes. Mm-hmm. So I think at the end of the day, you know, and what I learned, actually, just to wrap this up, it doesn't matter where you are in business, there's always going to be issues, right? Whether you're making $1 or $1 million, mm-hmm. right? I learned that from Tom Knox, who, when he was a $10,000 a month company, had issues to when he needed $750,000 to make payroll. Like, there are always going to be issues. It's how you deal with them. It's how you interact with those scenarios and try and hopefully this track record of beforehand is preparing you for what
you need to do in the future.
It could potentially happen. So if you are already in business and things are tough, really examine what you're doing and who you're surrounding yourself with, how much time you're spending on certain things, and really figure out if that time is being well spent or if it could be somewhere else. I'm not of the opinion that you should be a 24/7 business owner, because I think it will completely wipe you out. But I do think that you can take an inventory, just like you would on your financials, of your weeks and say, there's 4 hours here where I could be getting this information
or doing this
instead of this, which will result in a change in this thing that is a problem. And so it could be, I am spending 4 hours in meetings. I'm losing, let's say you make $100 an hour, I'm losing $400 there, when instead I could be selling or marketing, which in turn will create me $4,000, right? So by putting yourself in a scenario where you are making sure constantly that your days are getting the most bang for your buck, you're more likely to get the result that you want. Mm-hmm. And if you sit there and you wonder and you question, you go, why? Well, look into what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Because probably what's happening is that you're spending money on things that are getting you zero results, and instead of actually trying to fix it, you just sit on it until that number is insane, and you're like,
that's
fuck.
Too late.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like Albert Einstein said, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. So
we as entrepreneurs, we have a compass, right? I love that. Did you make that up today?
No, that was Seth Godin.
Oh, Seth Godin. Good job, Seth Godin. So you have this compass, and like you have to figure out how to get from A to B. And you've seen the thing where the piece of paper where it says, "Oh, people say entrepreneurship is A to B, and it's a straight line, but it's really all these, mountains, zigzags, whatever, spin arounds, roller coasters." Like, you have an end goal in life. My end goal is to own a majority stock in an amusement park, right? I know that's going to be a crap ton of money. If I ever want to get there, I have to do millions of small steps to get there, and millions of things that I could say yes to or I could say no to, right? My favorite line recently is from Derek Sivers, who said, if you're not super excited,
yes.
if you're thinking about doing something, if you're not hell yeah, it's a no, right? So
the original was fuck yeah.
It was? So I changed it. All right. I would have said that. I didn't know that. I've only seen this hell yeah. Was it fuck yeah?
Yeah, the original, yeah.
So, if you do not like people cussing, I apologize. Sometimes when you get a little passionate, the words that we use are more lubricated. But look, we appreciate your time today. If you're wondering how you can move more forward in your life, in anything, being a better chef, being a better business owner, being in a better relationship, I think it starts with you understanding that there are many ways to look at a scenario.
Yeah.
And if you start by examining your day-to-days, your weeks, your financial reports, that will give you a far better way to say, hey, this is weird. I'm actually doing 10 hours of work on this one little thing, and it's costing me thousands of dollars a year when I actually could just have someone else do that. You know, accounting, legal, right? Do you do any of those things?
No,
I don't.
no.
I hire someone to do it. You know why? Because I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an
Right.
accountant.
Somebody actually who does that for a living.
Why would I want to learn how to do
Right.
that? I don't want to learn how to do that.
To go back to what you're saying, and the quotes that you love with it right now is, you know,
Be all in.
Be all in and figure out what's the next step. And if you can't take a big step today, take a small step, but take it now. Figure out what it is you can do right now to keep moving things in a better direction moving forward.
Well, people that follow us on Facebook, I did a video a few weeks ago, and it was people are celebrating starting a business. Do you know how easy it is to start a business? Literally, everyone that's watching now or has been watching who has never started a business, you can literally go online, go to SCC website, and make sure that no one else has that business name, and you get a state license.
Yeah, $20, $40, something like that.
Maybe $100. Then you go to your city, and you get a business license. When people say, I started a business, like I could literally, and we should do this, I almost did it the other day. You can put on Facebook, I bet you I'd get 500 likes if I said I'm starting a new business.
Yeah.
Right? I want to say I'm so excited that I'm starting Zack Miller Enterprise. And people are like, congratulations, I haven't done shit.
That's the easy part.
Right? The hard part is getting customers. The hard part is taking that vision that you have and getting it in front of someone and convincing them to do the thing that you want them to do.
Right. Exactly. It's like the analogy I like to use is getting married. Like, okay, we spend all this money, we have all our friends come to this big wedding reception, and it's all great and beautiful and happy. But that's where it starts. What's going to happen the next day and the next day and 2 years later is putting in the work.
Yeah.
Like with a business, putting in the work. It's like with starting a career in the culinary industry, putting in the work.
Work works.
Great. Like you went to culinary school, you have a degree. Okay, now what? From day one, starting from then on, what is the work that I need to do? And the only way to get there to where you want to, where something's meaningful and gratifying and fulfilling, is to put in the work.
There's a couple other questions, but I can't see them. Sorry, I don't
think we
know
got
why.
to them all pretty much.
Did we? Okay. I think Becky said one other thing. I could see it there, but I can't see it here, and that's too far, and glasses are there. Oh, great point. There it is. Now I can see it. Great point about money management. I think the first reason why businesses fail, find a partner who's good at. Honestly, the reason I think businesses fail is because people are lazy. I said that at our startup address. I think that people know, like a business plan is easy to put together. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to make $1 million. I'm going to hire 25,000 people, and all things are great. But guess what? Like, if you don't go after those actions that you want, they'll never come to you. So we appreciate your time today. If you guys have never heard of Chef Chris Hill, check him out. All you have to do is on the search bar here, go Chef Chris Hill. He's got insane amounts of and really solid content. Appreciate you guys being with us today. If you guys have other questions, feel free to reach out in the comments or reach out to us directly via message if
We can help.
asking comments live isn't what you want, or hit us up, me at Zack, Z-A-C-K, at startwithhatch.com. And for you,
Chris at bachelorkitchen.com.
check out Making the Cut podcast. Really fun stuff. And if this stuff has been valuable for you, share it with your network so that they can watch it again over and over again. We appreciate your time, and hope you guys have a great weekend. And
Rock on, man. That was fun.
talk to you soon. Boom!
Cheers.
Whew.